Hello again, college football fans. Going to jump right into it. My national upset pick, I haven't been able to pick one correctly yet, but the reason for that, I'm gonna make an excuse for you guys. I like to pick real upsets. To me, if it's a 10 point favorite, or one of those games where a lot of people are predicting that it might be an upset, I think if two or three people say it's an upset, then it's not an upset. And if it's just 10 points spread or anything like that, that's not a real upset either. When I pick an upset, I want it to be a true upset, something no one saw coming, something that would really, disturb the whole national landscape a little bit too. I think that's another hallmark of a nice, good national upset pick. And all that saying, to say that, yeah, I really got a bust on that one this week. Got close with the couple of Oklahoma picks. I might have to go back to Oklahoma next week because Penn State came out and took care of business. Nothing overwhelming, nothing very impressing, but nowhere. There was never a chance where it felt like Indiana had a chance to make any waves in that game. They couldn't score a point. And so, moving on to the conference, Arkansas and Georgia. Well, the Bulldogs did it. They came out and they scored 37 points, 30 of which were, accredited to the offense. And that's what I said. If they could score 30 or more points on a real live team, then I would go ahead and put them in the 1B camp that everybody's putting them in. Basically, they're tied with Alabama camp. It's pretty clear. I think that offensive line, the way it just leaned on Arkansas from the very outset of that game was very, very impressive. Um, the defense looked every bit like we thought they would be. Arkansas looked a little bit overwhelmed. They looked more like a deer in the headlights than I thought that they would be. But that's understandable. I mean, this situation was completely different than. I mean, I think they may have gotten a little bit of false confidence because of beating Texas and Texas A&M. I was worried about that a little bit. Uh, Obviously, I didn't pick Arkansas to win this game, but I felt like that they wouldn't look as overwhelmed and as in deep water as they did look. They just looked like they weren't ready for prime time at all, and Georgia was, and they came out and took care of business. So from from this point forward until somebody proves me wrong, until they prove me wrong, then yeah, it looks like it's just a collision course. Alabama, Georgia in the SEC championship game. This I haven't seen two teams separate themselves as emphatically this quickly in a season since Alabama LSU in 2011. And one of the problems with that season was they were both in the same division. And so at least this year, we will get the two best teams in the SEC probably in the SEC championship. I feel like Alabama has got their toughest tests behind them, certainly on paper. Something's brewing down there in Auburn that I'm worrying about, but we'll see if that comes to fruition or not. But uh, Alabama, Georgia are far and away the best two teams in America, and the gap seems to be widening from week to week. I feel like someone will emerge eventually, but we don't know who that is yet. Ohio State's a candidate, obviously. That's my favorite candidate to come in and push to be a third elite-looking team. We thought we had Oregon in there, but surprisingly, I was very shocked that they lost to Stanford. Stanford hasn't been very impressive, hasn't been minimally impressive in quite some time. But you just cannot. Being an Alabama fan, I'm spoiled to Nick Saban never losing to teams he's not supposed to lose to, and it just when you see a team emerge, then you get that attitude. You take that posture as an Alabama fan, and you forget that we're in a situation where we've never really seen it before, and so those are good. That's going to happen to teams, to mortal teams, like I've said before. Moving on to Tennessee, Missouri. Tennessee, I picked them to win the game. Felt like I was going out on a bit of a limb. Turns out I was not going out on a limb. I had a big old fat beam to walk out on. because boy, oh boy, I picked the Missouri score right, 24, but Tennessee putting up 62 on an SEC opponent on the road. That's something different, Tennessee fans. Y'all can start getting real excited. I give you permission. Because look, you're in the catbird seat for a bowl in Heupel's first year. I didn't see that coming. I thought that, he would push for a bowl, but it looks like it's pretty much going to be a certainty. He's already got 3 wins. Looks like there's at least 2 more guaranteed wins on that schedule. So he's just going to have to muster up another one, and he's got a couple of chances that look very, very favorable for that one for him too. So Tennessee fans, you should just be dancing in the streets at this point, because I thought after what Jeremy Pruitt had put you in, the corner that he put you in was going to take a lot longer to get out of. But it looks like Heupel's got him on the fast track. Troy, South Carolina. Look at South Carolina getting their back up a little bit. I really thought they'd lose to not all that great Troy team. They tried to, but they pulled it out in the end, and South Carolina ought to be proud of themselves. They got 3 victories. But when I look at their schedule, I don't know where they're going to get 3 more to get bowl eligible. But if they did, man, that would be a huge feather in the cap of Beamer, the Beamer kid. I got to learn his first name eventually. If he wins a few more games, I will. Florida, Kentucky. This is the biggest hit I think that I have taken to any of my picks. And it's the biggest hit that an overarching narrative that I have held on to throughout the beginning part of this season. It took a big hit to Florida. My opinion of them being, just a little bit, if any, lower than Georgia. Well, it looks as though that's definitely not the case. I'm still not ready to throw them in the dustbin of this season because I just still have a lot of faith in Dan Mullen and his players, and I feel like he's going to come up with something to make this look a lot better than it does right now. They'll have some chances. Obviously, they got the big Georgia game coming up later in the season. I'd hold your horses on dismissing Florida just yet. Yeah, they're out of the playoff hunt. 2 losses, we haven't had one yet, and I really don't see that happening. A lot of things would have to happen. Georgia would have to lose to not only Florida but another team in order for Florida to sneak into the SEC title, and then they'd have to beat Alabama in the SEC championship game. That's just too much to ask, I think, for anybody at this point. But I do think that they're still going to have a chance to win a lot of football games and go to an Ice Bowl game and still be in the conversation, certainly going into next year for playoff hunts and that sort of thing. Mississippi State, Texas A&M. This and the Auburn game were both big coups for me. This is probably the best pick that I made this week. I picked Mississippi State to win this game 28-24, and they won it 26-22. So no. I can't remember what I picked for this. No. Yeah, that's right. I picked 24-17. But 26-22, hey man, I will take it. They were 7-point underdogs at Texas A&M's place. Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M are doing exactly what I predicted them to do, which is not much. And that game next week is not looking like it's going to have quite the cachet that they were hoping for. I saw that CBS has it as their primetime game. You remember when CBS used to be able to just nail that primetime game? The primetime game that they have one a year, and it was always going to be the big game of the year. And for a long time, it was Florida LSU, and they just nailed it every year. It was just a classic game that had national title implications. And then it went to Alabama LSU. But then Alabama kind of became the only dominant team in the SEC, so they would try to guess at it. And it's been Georgia a couple times. They slipped LSU back in there 1 or 2 times, and they never managed. And the one time that the Alabama LSU game should have been the primetime game in 2019, it wasn't. They got it wrong. And this year, I think they got it wrong again. I think they were hoping that Jimbo would be able to wake his Giants up like they've been predicting forever. But, of course, we all know that he's not been able to do that. And you get what you get. And so too bad for CBS next week. UConn, Vanderbilt. I picked UConn to beat Vanderbilt, not knowing that they were on a historic losing streak. I knew that they were bad and hardly ever win, but I didn't realize that they hadn't won a game in a couple of years. And Vanderbilt tried their best to do it, but they couldn't. And Vanderbilt is so disappointing. Even when they win, it's disappointing, isn't it? Poor guys. And now moving on to the best game of the week, the one that I should have just kept my opinion without going back on it in the last video when I spoke about them. I said that it was going to be the most interesting game, and then I backtracked, but it was the most interesting game by far for a lot of reasons. Well, first of all, LSU it looks exactly like I have been telling everybody since the preseason that they're just going to be lost. Ed Orgeron, it's finally happening what I've wanted to happen when they hired him, which is LSU collapsing and going back into an also-ran category the way they were when I started watching football. I kind of yearn for the SEC hierarchy to be what it was when I started, and that was a brilliant Florida and Tennessee teams back then. Georgia was kind of not good enough to be in the same conversation, and LSU was in definitely that boat on the other side in the West. Auburn, Alabama were talked about a lot, and then it just kind of dropped off. And I'm just not going to lie, that's the way I like things. And Bo Nix suddenly transforms into Johnny Manziel halfway through the second quarter. That was one of the most startling turnarounds and surprises that I've seen in a while in the SEC. Boy, oh boy. And I was asking just last week, what's going on with Bo Nix? And boy, he answered emphatically. They looked great. And like I said, I think there's something brewing down there on the plains, and this is one of those years that we have to go there. So before I start celebrating yet another perfect regular season, I'm just not going to be convinced unless they just collapse and start looking like something horrible, and that's not what I see happening. LSU, as horribly coached as they are, their linemen on both sides of the ball are probably comparable in talent to Georgia's. And Auburn, was able to hold their own enough to get a win against them. They weren't dominating them or moving them around by any stretch of the imagination, but they were doing enough to get old Johnny Manziel's understudy over there, Bo Nix, just enough time to make those miraculous plays he was making. That was very impressive and very entertaining, and I was glad to see that happen. And, streaks like 20 years since a team has beat you in your place, that's a sign. That's a sign that your program, the paradigm is changing for your program. And it's about time. It's about time for LSU. They've got a clown gorilla as their coach now. They had a complete lunatic before that, and but still managed to stay, in the national conversation way more than anybody would imagine that they should be. But now, like I said in the last one, LSU's descent is happening in earnest, and I don't see it changing for the rest of this season. And you're probably going to have a different coach at the LSU helm next year. And that's all I got for the conference recap this week, and we'll be talking to you again real soon. Thank you.